All right, Mayor, I think we have everybody who's going to be here, so you can get started whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. So welcome everyone to the March 15th Committee of the Whole meeting. Everyone is present except for Dave. Is that correct, George?
That's correct.
Trustee Maher? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So to kick it off, George, you want to put up the, or why don't you kind of set the groundwork of the meeting, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah, this is a workshop meeting, so there's no public hearings, but we are going to have an opportunity for the public to weigh in. Typically at a COW meeting, we'll do it at the applicable time of the agenda item, especially if there's a petitioner, which there is in the first item here today. But there will be another item, an opportunity at the end of the meeting under audience participation, in which I will ask you to raise your hand, and then I'll unmute you and let you speak. So same way, if you want to make a comment during one of the items, just raise your hand. I will call you up and unmute your mic. So that's all I have for you today, Mr. Mayor. We also had an opportunity to comment prior to the meeting, which we did not receive any, but I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So let's go ahead and kick it off. Thanks. My dad's in the background here. All right. So we'll kick off the meeting with the 129th Street annexation with rezoning discussion.
Right,
George, you want to kick this off?
I'll kick it over to Mark. Mark, I'm going to stop sharing. You can grab the screen if you're able.
Yes, thank you. All right, thank you, everybody. So with this item, it is a annexation and rezoning request. The petitioner is the Lithuanian Research and Studies Center Incorporated, represented by Dr. Robert Vitas and also their attorney, John Antonopoulos, both of whom are, I believe, on our Zoom meeting here with us this evening. So they will be available to answer any questions shortly. The property in question, 15533 129th Street. That's the northeast corner of State and 129th, currently unincorporated, with county residential zoning. And the request, this is the former Mary Sears Children's Academy as well, just for reference. The applicant had purchased the property a couple of years ago and has been working with Cook County for their necessary permits, et cetera, for a few years, I believe. And so when the village learned about this, it was thought best for them to just finish up since they had gotten so far with the county, with whatever county approvals that they needed, and then come to us, the village, to annex in. The Research and Studies Office is primarily an office type use where there'd be 2 or 3 folks present at any given time, organizing and also digitizing various just documents. So it's an office use. So the proposal would be to annex in and have B1 zoning, which is appropriate given the surrounding land uses and the surrounding zoning. The property immediately to the north has B1 zoning, and there's B3 zoning across the street on State Street. The site has neighborhood retail, comprehensive plan designation. So the use is an office, and the B1 zoning is appropriate at that location. So just a little bit further with the history, we had the public hearing for the zoning earlier this month at our March 3rd Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, where the request received unanimous recommendation to approve from the Planning and Zoning Commission. As I noted, the annexation and rezoning are in line with our comprehensive plan. This request would have a annexation agreement tied to it, and we did provide a draft of that in the packet. It's essentially the standard village boilerplate template annexation agreement with some modifications for the specific requests as it relates to connecting to utilities, which are on the opposite side of State Street on the west side, and also with the sidewalk. And there, with the request as it is right now, this is just annexation and zoning. It's not a new development. There's no new building coming in, and they've been entitled and approved and had permits issued and everything with the county. So it's essentially a legally non-conforming use. And so the annexation agreement would really just memorialize that and just make it clear that it is essentially non-conforming. And if there is future development, redevelopment, 10 years from now or whatever, someone decides to purchase the property, is able to purchase the property and wants to redevelop it, put a new building there, then they'd have to go through and get the utility hookups and provide for a sidewalk. So that's essentially what's in the annexation agreement. We would have to have a public hearing for the annexation agreement. We'll do that at a subsequent board meeting. Staff's making a recommendation to approve this request. Any questions?
Thanks, Mark. Mark, just real quick. So as far as the annexation, they would be coming in. The recommendation is from staff, planning and zoning. They heard this as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
And their recommendation is to approve it as well. Correct.
Correct.
Any stipulations or conditions from planning and zoning?
No, there was none, and there was very little discussion with the planning and zoning. Just a few questions to just kind of better understand the use, and there was no one from the public in attendance as well, and so no comment from the public or surrounding property owners.
Okay, great. And as far as the use, again, this is an offshoot of the Lithuanian Center. This is more of their back office. Is that correct as far as the use they're going to be using the building?
The applicants here, they can, further provide more detail, but again, there's documents there. There's an office. So you'd have, again, 2 or 3 staff members there, primarily just organizing and digitizing things. You're not going to have a tremendous volume of folks coming to the site on a daily basis. It's not going to be event space or anything along those lines. It's essentially just an office for organizing documents.
Great. And again, Lithuanian Center, they are a great, partner to our town. We appreciate them being in our town, and anything we can do to further enhance their community only makes our entire town that much stronger. So again, looking forward to them being able to take this property over and for us to be able to annex them in. Those are my thoughts on it. I don't know. Do we have any other questions or comments from any of the other trustees?
No questions from me, Mayor.
Okay, great. Any other comments or questions from the applicant? I'm sorry, I can't see who's here. I heard John might be on as well.
John Antonopoulos, can you hear me?
Yeah, John, go ahead.
I don't know. I have a bad connection I'm at my house, just finishing up my dinner, unfortunately. But no, I just like to thank the staff for really expediting this process and being very accommodating in our requests.
Great, John. All right, do you have anything else for us, John? Any questions or
That's
comments?
That's it. Just ask you to approve the recommendations of the staff.
Awesome. Anyone have any objections to approving this? If you do, any comments?
None from me.
Awesome. All right. Let's continue on. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
And thank you very much. This is from the Lithuanian Research Center. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
We look
Good
forward
luck.
to it. Thank you.
I'm getting some feedback.
You know what?
You guys hear?
I think it was John Anton, not to put him on the spot. I think that was John Antonopoulos.
Oh,
So he's,
okay,
but
all right.
but thank you to John and the petitioners. When this came through to the planning and zoning for the Cook County, as it was unincorporated, we reached out, and Mark and myself and everyone was very accommodating. They understood that with directions being given by Cook County and in general from this board, we'd like to have adjacent properties that are able to be annexed to our town. And I think this is a win-win for everybody. So Thank you to everybody.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's continue on. What do we have up next, George?
Yeah, Mark has the UDO amendments. Go ahead, Mark.
Awesome.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as you're aware, we've been doing a number of UDO amendments that were discussed at the Planning and Zoning Commission at a couple of meetings, and we brought the majority of the proposed UDO amendments to last month's Committee of the Whole meeting in February. There was one specific one, kind of one of the bigger proposed UDO amendments that we had related to open space, the open space requirement in plan unit developments. The Planning and Zoning Commission wanted to look at that a little bit more detail and get some further information from staff. And so that occurred. There was a further review and discussion with the Planning and Zoning Commission at our March 3rd meeting just a couple of weeks ago. And staff had presented a few different options to the Planning and Zoning Commission about how we could potentially amend our regulation as it relates to open space in planning in residential plan unit developments. A lot of this was based off of some research our consulting planner did, looking at regulations from other communities. And it's important to note our comprehensive plan does try to balance. We do want to encourage infill development, while at the same time recognizing that open space does certainly have value. So we're trying to balance those two aspects. So on the screen right now, this is from the code, the open space requirement, verbatim, but essentially a plan unit development with a residential component that is not in the downtown district, as the code's written right now, is required to provide 15% open space. That could just be a vacant green, field of grass per code. There's information here about, if there's trails and such, but there's no requirement as to what that open space needs to be. There is some regulation, as you can see on the right, about what does not count toward open space. And in particular, stormwater detention and retention is not counted per our code. There are a number of other communities that do count that toward their open space requirement. However, they typically have a higher percentage as their requirement as well, though. So one of the key things that we did do as well as staff is we looked at a number of the recent plan unit developments that have gone through the process and what the percentage of open space was provided per code. And as you can see, if the code requires 15%, there's only one development, Timber Run, which did not get their final approvals as the developer moved along. That would have been the only one that actually complied with the code. But of course, a large development like that, they should be able to meet those requirements. Marble Landing, also considerable size, they were close. And with that one, there is actually a portion, some trails proposed, some walking paths in their stormwater detention area that didn't count. So in a way, they were kind of there. And as you can see, a number of the other developments on the screen here, many of them are smaller, less than 4 or 5 acres, in some cases less than an acre, with only a handful of units. But at the same time, many of them still were providing some sort of open space. It just may not have counted toward code. There was naturalized detention, something like Townhomes O'Reilly's Meadow. They were right next door to a existing park site, plus they provided some open space that they enhanced and have posed with, like some benches, etc. So that's something that a lot of development has done and we've approved is to have some quality as opposed to just quantity. So again, with the discussion, essentially the discussion was, do we just have a code change that maybe provides for a reduction for smaller development? So if the development is, under a certain size and under a certain number of units, do we have a smaller percentage requirement? Do we also look at potentially requiring different percentages based on the type of development? So, a single family detached development where, each unit would have their own backyards may not need as much open space as a multifamily development would. Or do we allow reductions based on certain factors? As I noted, part of those PUD approvals in the past where we've reduced the open space is that there's been some, enhancement to the open space. There's naturalized detention, there's gazebos, there's walking paths, there's benches, etc., maybe enhanced landscaping. So is there, some set of criteria that we can put in place to base reducing the open space? And ultimately, what's kind of came out, and it was a staff, option as well, but the PZC made it as a recommendation, is a quote unquote hybrid approach, where we kind of do all of the above. So we do take into consideration the type of use, the size of the development, and also allow for the possibility of even further reduction based on certain factors. And I kind of show this more on the screen. This is taken directly from the report. If this proposed UDO amendment were approved, we'd insert a table into the code similar to the one on the screen, where you can see that, on the top, single family detached, duplex, townhomes, multifamily, mixed use with residential. So, that's very similar to multifamily. And then based on size, you have certain percentages. But then we would also have language in the code as shown on the bottom of the screen, wherein as part of the analysis that staff would make and the Planning and Zoning Commission would make, we could be open to even further reductions if the development meets certain criteria, if they are close to park space, if there's parks, directly adjacent, or if the park space is within walking distance, but with an accessible route, or if they're providing certain active or passive recreational opportunities on site. So again, as opposed to just having, whether it's 10% or 15% of open space just with an empty field, they can maybe do a smaller amount of open space, but if they're providing some enhancement to it, we would allow it. And, another thought was some kind of, if, there's landscaped boulevards or other attractive right-of-way features as well. So the idea is to, provide enhancements to the site, aesthetic enhancements to the site, to improve the look and the aesthetics of the site, as opposed to, again, just having a blanket 10, 15% requirement that, again, could be met with just, a blank field. So this was the recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission, what you see on the screen here. And it did receive a unanimous recommendation from the Planning and Zoning, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Hey, Mark, the one question I have, as far as the single family detached, more than 20 acres, more than 20 units, it has 10%. So previously it was 15%. That's coming down to 10.
Right.
What was the rationale there?
Again, the rationale is that, a single family detached development, those units are going to be houses with yards. They're going to be larger, yards in size. So there's going to be a backyard for each unit. Is going to have a backyard where there could be, depending on the homeowner, they can put in a deck, a patio, a pool, a playground, etc. So, the idea is there is private open space being provided. Our code doesn't count that. Other communities did count private open space. So like yards, just yard space was counted toward those open space requirements. So that's kind of the factor that went in here, is on this use table as you go from left to right. Again, the single family detached has that private backyard, and that gets less and less as you move to the right on the use table, whereas an apartment building, that does not exist. So that was a thought process. There's just less need of it in a single family detached.
Got it. And as far as I'm concerned, we no longer really have, passive just cornfields. Not that we really ever had that, but we definitely do not have it now. We have a bunch of infill type of subdivisions where we're, trying to put in, odd lots anywhere. I think your previous list showed it anywhere from 2 to 4 homes to 20 homes. Timber Run is one that is larger. we might have one or two depending on what happens with some other unincorporated areas that might be larger. But again, we're really, starting to act more like a typical built out suburban town. We don't have the, the open farm fields that maybe a Homer Glen has, or that we had years before. So this makes sense to me. With that being said, any other questions or comments by any of the other trustees?
Yeah, Rick had his hand up. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, actually, part of what John asked and what Mark answered addresses it, but and I was not at the last meeting on this, although I was at the one prior to it. I would make a suggestion that we lower the acreage to maybe even as low as 3 acres as for consideration, but then include and maintain the 15%, but include any dry basin retention. Because to me, if a dry retention basin, especially the way we have them designed in town, if they're wet, they're generally only wet for about a day. And during that day, it's still raining. Otherwise, the grounds are still wet regardless. So for the most part, I would believe that detention areas around town are, well, I would just take a stab at saying 90% usable space for open area activities. And many towns do use those, and we do also use those open areas for potentially a field for soccer or baseball or anything like that. And so, we're kind of double whamming a developer when we don't include it and keep the percentage high. However, John, addressing what you were talking about, we have also reduced the side yard setbacks over the years. So we are making our properties tighter even when they do have backyards, which is why I'm saying let's reduce it to when we consider it a need to maybe 3 acres rather than this, we're at 0 to 10 here. We're like at 5, but include the dry detention. I don't know, Mark, was that ever, did you guys include any dry detention in your thought, or just private property?
It really didn't come up. It is a good point. It was considered because, again, as I noted, other communities do count.
Right. I understand.
And have, but they may have a 25 or a 30% requirement for their own.
Right.
So
I'm just of the feeling that if it's private property, I don't really think that should be considered, but I'm all about saying, let's keep the percentage, but then include the dry retention.
I think it's just a philosophy because
yeah,
I wasn't here when this part of the code was written, of course, but my thought was the reason why it's excluded right now is that stormwater detention is stormwater detention, while sometimes it's wet detention, of course. Right. Brought up, sometimes they provide dry detention, and yes, that could be usable for a significant portion of time, but then they may, a developer may come in and get all of their open space met with just their detention. And right. So you have a development, and again, it could be 20% of the lot or 15% of the lot, and that's the only quote unquote open space or sort of enhancement that they're providing. And I think the thought was probably to have the developer do something beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the code was written as it is. And again, and I think our thought was to just not stray too far from how our code is currently written. And even what you see on the screen would be a pretty substantial code change, but not completely reinvent the wheel was just our thought process.
Yeah. Well, then let me just go a different direction and say that I think we ought to consider dry retention on the smaller areas. I don't think we have very many that will even qualify for a larger area because we don't have any sites that are 20-acre sites. We have very minimal areas that will even be included, maybe one here or there.
Trustee Snagowski, that, what we could do is, as I noted, we have this hybrid approach and we have some of these
right.
thought process was to, on the bottom of the screen, actually try to codify some of the things that we're looking for. Maybe that's something we can put in there is, we could consider dry detention, and it's not guaranteed. As you can see, the language here is if significantly provide the following. So, dry detention and so then that's something that as part of the staff review with the village engineer and then with the planning and zoning commission, there could be that review of, if that's something worthwhile to reduce or not.
Right. I didn't read the rest of my notes now that I'm looking here, because I did have, possibly vary that percentage and allow reductions to be negotiable based on enhancements, and put that in your hands as you're talking with the developer. So I agree with that thought. And
yeah, that's what we're kind of going here. And so it's really a matter of fine tuning the percentages. If there's other things that we want to include in those enhancements, the list at the bottom, obviously we can include them.
So my thought is even with the smaller development, there might be room for some, small, like I'll call it the Debbie Blatzer Park for little kids. There might be a few things that you could fit in a very small area. You're not going to build fields because they're not available in the area, and which is really going to get into that percentage. So I'm open to you guys making a change. I think it is something that needs to be looked at, because I think in most cases it's unrealistic of what we're trying to do. And we're either going to have to negotiate it out because it just isn't possible to have somebody develop and allow that space. So I'd like to give you more flexibility in negotiating. That's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Rick. And Rick, to piggyback off that, Mark, because what we have are a lot of infill subdivisions, if you want to call them even subdivisions. It's very possible some of these infills might be right next to a park already. So we might be, potentially asking for open space when they're already right next to open space. Now, we could also have the same, the opposite issue as well. So I don't know, maybe you might want to add some language of proximity to other, whatever it may be. So,
John, Mark, I was thinking too, could you go back one slide? Man was wrong. Maybe it's 2. This one. Yeah, this one, where it talks about, for example, equestrian meadows. Now that came in, I'm 99% sure if I have it right in my head where that is, that's right there surrounded. It's like right on Bell, surrounded by equestrian estates. So the point is those properties are already 1 acre properties out there. So it just has a different, aesthetics to it to begin with, because it is open space surrounding those homes. So I have less of a problem reducing the percentage when the yard sizes are bigger. Like you said, again, it is private property, but if it depends on what we're talking about. Are we talking about dedicated park property, or are we talking about the look of open space? I think we have to decide that.
Yeah, just real quick to another point with this chart, we have the chart, but then there is the possibility of further reduction. And Mr. Mayor, we do note, if it's adjacent to park space, open space, forest preserve, that could be one of the factors. And then the second one would be if it's in a quarter mile, which is roughly a 5-minute walk by an accessible route, that could be a factor as well. And a lot of this is, right, top of mind. I maybe should have included their site plan, but with Riley's Meadow, that was it's less than 4 acres, 20 units, but they're a mix of duplexes and townhomes, and providing 7% open space. So, that's roughly in line with kind of what we're proposing with townhomes at 7%. Again, maybe they should have been up to 10% because they were more than 10 units, but they're right next to a dedicated park site. And so that's one of the factors going in there. Plus, they provided those pathways and benches as well. So, that's kind of the thought process here.
Mark, to jump in on that though, the only downside I see to that, when you talk about a quarter mile to a park, because we see it already now on 127th Street, would be if you have to cross a major street, artery, in order to get to that park within the quarter mile. For little kids, then that becomes an issue for many parents. So
worded it dedicated, accessible route. We can maybe fine-tune that language to make it clear.
Right.
This isn't a quarter mile as the crow flies. It's, a quarter mile that in real life, somebody could be pushing, I could be pushing my child in a stroller to the park safely. That's what the intent is with that.
And generally there are street lights at corners that you can go to, but,
Okay, Mark, thanks. Any other questions or comments for Mark on this?
No, I like it. I like it a lot, actually. I think it makes a lot of sense. But even to Rick's point, the reduction, for 3 acres or less, we can easily add that on there we can include the tensions for 3 acres or less. Give them credit towards that.
Yeah, Ken, I was speaking of, when it's dry retention. If it's a true retention rather than a detention where it's going to have water, then I wouldn't count it. You know what I'm saying? So that's all I meant.
So just in general, is the feedback, okay, this is generally good, but maybe fine tune it to adjust some of these categories. So instead of 0 to 10 units and 0 to 10 acres, it's 0 to 10 units and 0 to 3 acres, right? So just to kind of fine tune some of the size requirements.
That's my opinion, Mark. And obviously I'm trying to get it to something that becomes more manageable to you guys, where you're not going to get stuck in having to be subjective with everything, so, because obviously if you are, somebody's going to like it, somebody's not going to like it. So it gives you some numbers to say, hey, this is where I started from. And it's not quite as broad as these are. That's all.
Okay.
Mark, any other questions? Are you comfortable with what we're giving you? Do you understand what needs to be done?
I do. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, George, are we going to move forward with MWRD, or are we leaving that to the end? George, are you on? You might be on mute.
Yeah, we're gonna go through we have 3 items under the budget. So we're gonna go through those together, if that works, Mr. Mayor, and then we'll come back.
Yep, sounds good.
All right, cool. Let me reshare my screen. Chris, I know you're gonna take this once I get my screen going. Hold on just a second. All right. Oh, Chris, you there? All right. Oh, you're muted. Sorry. There you go.
Thank you. Yes, I'm going to put together the slide presentation will cover where we are to date, the proposed budget, and then the extension of the audit contract. So basically, where we are today, the fiscal response year to date. As I stated before, we have right now, we have 3 COVID funding, either that we have received or in the process of receiving. So the first one was a small one for PPE from Irma, and that was really a reimbursement. The second one was the Cook County, where the counties gave the municipalities a pro rata share based on their population. Cook County did it also a different kind of formula in there as well. So we did receive a lot lower than other communities in other counties. But anyway, we received 183,000, and then they went back and said, we have a little bit more, so we'll give you 12,000. So together for Cook County, we received those two funding sources. And then Will County, it was on a per capita, we're a very little population in Will County. But those funds were used for our grant program, public safety, picnic tables, all the items that weren't going to be covered under FEMA or IRMA. And then FEMA, they're still processing it. We submitted $36,000 of refundable expenditures, and that was PPE, extra cleaning and the facilities at our facilities and COVID testing. So what I do want to state is that any funding that we have received right now has not covered any lost revenue whatsoever that the village has incurred over the year. And lost revenues from sales tax, video gaming tax, commuter parking fees, telecommunication tax, motor fuel revenue, utility delinquencies, and any deferring revenues. And as I go through this, we were fortunate where right before our budget was adopted, we kind of changed our budget projections for fiscal year 21 so that we lowered one-time expenditures, and we did a lot of and that's the next one too. We did a lot of items before the budget was adopted so that we're actually within budget. However, we cut expenditures before we went into this budget. So in March, we closed the lobbies. We closed our lobby. However, we were still here on a rotating basis, and we did have pickup bins and drop-off bins in the vestibules. So we didn't close business, but we closed our lobby. With that, we pushed, and that's a lot of the virtual customer service. We pushed a lot of virtual customer service so that we still can continue with the businesses. We still had to process payments. There was a lot of informational videos we did. We updated the website and we're user-friendly Zoom meetings. We were still staffing it. We did online permits, small online permits. And then also the one thing was we had over 200 new bank draft accounts for utility customer. And bank drafting is cheaper than credit card payments. Credit cards, we have to, there's a fee to that. And the bank draft, there's no fee for us. So where we are today on the budgeted data, on our revenues, our three type of revenues, our sales tax remains stable. 1 month is increase, the next month is decrease. You'll see further down the road, we did have March sales, or March taxes, which is December sales, which is Christmas sales, and it is lower than before. However, the previous months were a little bit higher. So we did have, several months increases and then some decreases as well. Income tax, it fluctuates. It was fluctuating because of the tax return due dates, and then the property tax. There was minimal fluctuation despite the changes in the due date. The local use tax, promotion of the online sales, this revenue increased over 25%. And then video gaming, like I said before, and telecommunication tax, they have plummeted over 30%. And that is between video gaming and telecommunication tax, we've reduced the budget once, but between those two, it's almost a loss of $200,000 of revenue that we received over the year. Permit revenues saw an increase due to many home projects, and we didn't stop business. Like I said, we closed the vestibule, but we did everything online or with the drop boxes as well. Water and sewer, May to August, we had a lot of past due customers. We waived late fees, so we're within budget and we anticipated a lot of that, but we lost over $700,000 worth of revenue. And I have like a quick list if you ever wanted one, and I kind of made one because it really, when you see these small, okay, here's 100, there's 100, but it all adds up. And that's only this past year. So the effects are going to be on more, and we don't know what the state's going to do. So I just wanted to show the graphs that we have. And as you can see, the income tax, now I have not seen March income tax yet being posted yet. So the income tax, there's a lot of fluctuation. The purple line is last year, and then 21 is this year, the blue with the squares in it. So as you can see, there's been a lot of fluctuation, and it's not like what it was before, where you had the big spikes in May. And retail sales tax, as you see, the kind of like the peach line is that March one with the sale, with where it ends in March. Those are the Christmas sales. So it is lower than before. The lower line, the black line, is your non-home rule sales tax. So I do understand that, in January, which is 2 months earlier, they did have more sales. They had those were October sales, and in November they had a little bit more sales. But then December. So it's really it's fluctuating a lot. So we have to be conservative on that. So, and I do want to state too, we still have a very strong cash position, and this is kudos to the board, because the board has really, over the past years, as you can see from 2008, we really have made some strides in maintaining our cash positions, maintaining our fund balances, and the non-home rule sales tax really has assisted us with not only doing more projects, but even assisting us with the fund balance to maintain a strong fund balance. And you want to have a strong fund balance for such fluctuations as, we could go into a recession, and, we need to cut expenditures, but we can't stop completely doing business. We still have to, we're public safety. We have, we're government. We have to still provide services. So the strong cash position is what we need. I do want to say though, and that's one thing that I looked up. So even with our strong cash position, our interest income, we're losing about $100,000 this last year. And that has to do with, because we have to, we can't be in equities. We have to be in the fixed income, which is mostly just interest income and very, in the Fed funds rate and everything. And so with that, our investments have gone down from the previous year. So I do want to say that as well. Okay, so our budget approach, where we are, where we're going into fiscal year 22. As I said before, conservative revenue projection. Now, the retail sales, the amended budget was very conservative, so I did increase it by 7%. That is not only just like a 3 or 4% growth, but it is, we were fortunate to have, and I say it all the time, to have, several businesses come in right before COVID-19 hit. So they really assisted us in maintaining retail sales over the last year. So I did increase it over the amended budget of 7%. Income tax is a very, very slight increase. I did put in, and I know it's the governor's proposal, but I did put a 10% reduction right now, because it seems every time the state has issues, they basically either not give us the money for a couple months or they reduce it. So I did put that 10% reduction. I did put a half a year of increase in population for the income tax as well, because it's a per capita, but the increase is only about a 1% right now. The local use tax is also a per capita. Also, we're showing minimal growth because there's changes in the online sales tax. Now, we haven't really seen an effect so much of it, but it's really, there's a two-month delay, so it really hasn't hit us yet. It's going to hit in January, so which will be April's revenues, where we may see a shift. So on permit revenue, we're showing continued growth. Telecommunication tax, like I said before, we're mirroring the history, and there was a 30% loss in revenue. So we did keep that the same with anticipated revenues from this past year. And gaming tax, we increased it to historic levels. So we're conservative, but yet we don't have a crystal ball. So we are increasing the revenues, but not like, we're going to be pre-COVID. We're not going to be pre-COVID. Expenditures, we've done just based on contracts, outside contracts, 0 to 2% based on trends, and overall very, very minimal increases. Okay, the theme really is the current climate makes long-term planning even more critical. So what a lot of items that are in this budget for fiscal year 22 is based on preparing us for the future. We're creating a building. We wanted to do that last year. We're creating this year a building maintenance fund. We really, really need to create it. There's large expenditures that are going to come in the future. We did a one-time transfer right now from the general fund of $225,000. The maintenance for the first year of we have a 10-year maintenance plan, which we will show further down the road, on this slide presentation. And, but the first year is $223,000. So really the first year, the expenditures will offset the revenues. So, but we need to fund this on an annual basis. We're dissolving the parking garage fund. Historically, the parking garage fund is supported. A portion of the revenues come from spaces being rented out. You know that we receive some of the revenue from some of the spaces, and then we always would transfer money from the general fund. So in speaking with the auditors, instead of constantly transferring monies from the general fund into the parking garage fund, we just kind of absorb it into the general fund. Virtual projects, we continue to invest now for the future. Capital projects, we're putting each of the capital projects online so the residents can see where we are year to date with these capital projects, where are we with the funding and the budgeting, and then we're focusing on online permitting. Facade and business grants are focusing, marketing initiatives, strategic planning, leadership development, and federal advocacy services. Like I said, everything that we're trying to do now is for the future to basically long-term planning. Here are our fund balances. I try to put them all on one slide, but as you can see, we some of the ones that are going down are the ones that we're doing some large projects, the motor fuel, the infrastructure, and road improvement. That one's going up a little more, but we're doing a lot of projects. We also are receiving a lot of grant funding this year. So we're working with it. The TIFs, as you can see, the TIFs are still, we still have not received, they're not receiving as much increment as our expenditures. So they are, the fund balances are going down on the TIFs. We hope that with the Main and Archer, the Gateway Reserve funds, that 2.4 million, that is with the sale of the anticipated sale of the Main and Archer TIF. We didn't want to put it in the TIF. We put it in there, and then we'll use it for the debt service payments. The general fund balance, as I mentioned before, if you look at 09 and 10, it was so low. The rating agencies, they had us at a way lower rate than we are today. It really it needs to be where it's at right now. So it will help us for the future. And this is the revenue for all the funds. As you can see, just in the general fund versus the amended versus the proposed, there's an increase. However, if you add in fiscal year 21, the one we're in right now, we cut all of the one-time capital equipment, and that was almost $600,000. And we put it back into the proposed of fiscal year 22. So the capital equipment that we purchased from the vehicle stickers, your police vehicles, your public works, your snow plowing equipment, all that was taken out of the budget in 21, and we put it actually back into 22. So the revenues, we've increased the revenues and we increased expenditures, and basically on that, you do see on the property maintenance fund, that $225,000, that's the transfer from the general fund into the property maintenance fund as well. Okay, and so the expenditures, basically the same story, that I was just saying before. On the expenditures, it's not a lot of increases. However, we are increasing to keep our infrastructure, our capital equipment, and our operations going, but the operations actually are increasing by very minimal. We look at all the contracts. When we renew them, we're very fiscally responsible in renewing our operating contracts. I do want to I took the expenditures, and what I did is I pulled out the capital and pulled out the transfers, and basically, so it's only your elements, your personnel, your materials, outside services. And as you can see, the personnel component of it is 58%. So that is the component of our, and if you add professional development, which is your training, so it's almost 59% of our expenditures in our operating is people. So on the general fund, you can see the graphs that I've always done, as you can see, and the rating agencies really like this as well, is we have an array of different types of revenues, and then in the expenditures, you'll see that the public safety and our public works are one of the higher percentages, and that's where your services are at for our community. I did want to, this is a kind of a new graph, and it's, I just wanted to point out, sometimes we tend to forget, our larger primary funding sources, and I did put non-home rule sales tax, even though it's general fund, some of them, like the local use, you really can see, okay, it's back in 2018, it was lower, but then it's gone up. But if you can see the utility tax, the income tax, it's very volatile. 1 year is good, 1 year's bad. So budgeting for these revenues are difficult, and we try to stay very conservative over the years so that we don't over budget and we don't under budget. So we try to stay conservative on that. And then again, I just kind of looked, showed the expenditures for the general fund, where we are, our amended, our actual, and as you can see, the 2020 actual and the 2022 proposed, there's not that much of an increase. So like I said, the budget is not too aggressive, but however, we are increasing it. Okay, and then we go into the departments, it highlights the initiatives in the admin. As I said before, we have staff leadership, we have business retention, development, strategic planning, and then we do have the chamber support, which is for the rent. So I budgeted the revenue in the rent, and this would be basically a grant or a money that you give to the chamber so they can pay us the rent. So it's an in and an out.
And Chris, I was going to jump in right there, and great job going through the financials. We were, this year is a little bit more of a regular year, I guess. Last year obviously was different with COVID and holding expenditures back. This year is more of a typical budget, but I will say we're going to be focusing in on a couple areas that you touched on. One is building maintenance, which we're going to get to later. Putting money away for those projects, and that's even changed with the weather having roof issues here at Village Hall, the old police station. It also kind of gets into a conversation of our facilities and how we're using them or how we should use them. We'll get into that. Before I turn it over to Jason, just a couple quick points. One thing that is always good practice every 4 years, the auditors love it, the budgeting tool staff, but I think you guys get a lot out of it from a board standpoint. We're going to have a new board member, come on board here in May or June. It's always a good time to look at strategic planning. We won't do that for a few months, but think about it over the last 3 or 4 years. A lot has changed around us inside Lemont, our borders. April 6th, we'll know if our grade school will be building a new school or not. I mean, a lot's happening in and around us. And if you get a chance, watch the mayor's State of the Village here coming out next week. Right, Mayor, give you a little plug there. But there's a lot of good things happening. There's been a lot of changes around us, so it's a good time to sit down, reevaluate priorities, and come up with deliverables. And again, it just makes my job a lot easier, and hopefully all of yours too. So we're going to do that here in the new year. Couple things related to the chamber, and Jason and I were talking about this before, some of their transition that we were made aware of recently. Of just trying to, I think we're going to have to take on a little bit, more like we always do, and we're capable and willing and able regarding, business retention, entrepreneurial development programs. We've been talking about doing a program where we'll start small with any of our business owners who want to start up a little of a pilot, coaching program where we bring in experts from the field. And we did a little bit of this with, after COVID initially hit and getting everybody together on Zoom. Once we're ready to get everyone back together, we're going to try to put some resources towards that. And again, thinking that we're going to have to take on a little bit more with the chamber. If you haven't heard Glenn Pasowitz, he's not going far, but he stepped down from the chamber. They're going through some transition. They've had a tough year regarding, COVID really hitting them hard with renewals not coming in like they usually do. And they have not been, paying rent. They've been occupying the old police station, but have not been paying rent for the last 9 months or so. And, they've been struggling and been talking to the new president. The mayor and I have to sit down with them and see where their direction goes. But regardless of where the transition heads, we're going to be taking on a little bit more. So I thought that was important to put some resources in there, strategic planning, and kind of go from there. But and also marketing, and Jason will get into a little bit more, having a year under our belt with the Forge. How do we, we've been in close contact with them. Who are their customers? When are they coming? So we can capture them, bring them to our downtown and leverage what's happening out at the Forge. So I know I saw a hand go up, and maybe we're covering it. I do have Jason's slides. Jason, you want to jump on in, and then we'll kind of go from there. You're muted, Jason. Jason, you're muted. There you go. Yep, we're good.
Okay, thanks everybody. This slide here is what Chris prepared as part of the budget itself. Chris might want to jump back in. She's muted too.
We'll just go to your item. I think
Okay.
These are just you'll see these that we did do a new format with the budget where we're including, performance measures and some other narratives. But I thought it was a good time to jump in and talk about some of your initiatives, Jason.
Sure. Just a quick recap. We do want to do grants in the coming fiscal year. They're in the budget in both TIF and general fund grants. But here's those that we issued in December. Almost all of them are under construction, or some of them are already done. We're waiting on a couple. So, you could see that money that we put into the grant project leveraged a lot of new development around town. Al Swice's building at the corner of Main and Stephen being the leader. A lot of stone out there. The next slide just kind of starts to go through some of the parts of our incentive policy. I'd like to bring this back to the board annually. We launched this policy in 2019. In 2020, obviously, we put a pause on it, brought it back in the fall when we added CARES grants, and we took some grants out that initially we thought we'd be able to offer. So this, the current incentive policy restores all the grants. So the tax share, it gives us just a framework for when we will offer sales tax shares. We want to see a significant improvement there. Other grants include folks that are doing public parking or ADA improvements. We've been talking for a couple of years about doing a project potentially with Pat Stanton and along the I&M Canal, improving the parking there. So this would be an opportunity for the village to invest. And then bring back retail recruitment incentives for downtown, really critical for us to help have a thriving downtown and be able to go out and get some of the gaps that people want. So these are incentives that target specific business sectors: apparel, sports, entertainment, furniture, some things that are missing in the downtown to just kind of round out the retail environment down there. We also are working in 2020 with 21 with a lot of partners. We got launched with all this, and we'll continue for 21-22 fiscal year. Obviously, with our community, the Downtown Focus Group and the Heritage Corridor Outdoor Recreation are continue to be important partners for us. We've been waiting on CMAP to launch the downtown parking and civic space study. They put an RFP out in February that ended at the end of the month. So they're selecting their consultant for that project now. Lemont was also asked to be part of their consortium on public space innovations. And that's taking a look back over the past year at things that communities did in response to COVID, outdoor dining, for example, for most folks, but try to take the best of what we did over the past year and find ways to make it hopefully permanent for a lot of folks, or for people that weren't able to do it, find ways to show them how to. And this upcoming fiscal year, we up our commitment to the Heritage Corridor, CVB. They already do all the Lemont social media. With the loss of the DMA, and you know, we and even ahead of that, though, really, we went back to the Heritage Corridor and they created the LemontDowntown.com site. They do the social for Lemont Downtown. So they've done a lot of work. And the goal there was just to create regional awareness for our downtown. And we've been advertising for Lemont Downtown, mostly in print, travel guides, but you know, have been talking about opportunities to do more online, boosting posts and paid advertising with the CVB. One of the consultants we want to bring in this year, we started this process last year, looking at somebody to help bring together the village's various efforts. You know, these things, the engagement, the branding, and the placemaking are all part of our marketing initiatives, and finding a group that has the skills to bring them all together has been tricky, but we like what we saw from All Together Studio. We also talked to Downtown Destination and Envision It. Altogether was the most affordable option, and they presented, they have a lot of flexibility as well. They presented a contract that has both a specific downtown project as well as a retainer option. And, you know, we hope to bring that back to the board as soon as next week. So the next slide kind of shows what we'd like to kick off with Altogether. Really getting ready for the summer, although it's, you know, continues on into July, but a lot of these things happening concurrently. So looking at the brand and a communication, where we want to be is very important. We'll talk again, you know, the stakeholder stuff, kind of refresh some of the art direction and visuals. They're really strong with that, as well as look at where and how we should be marketing, you know, making sure we're spending our marketing dollars well, and refreshing any of the collateral that we do use. That's, you know, an advertising piece, a rack card, some other things. We'll also, you know, intend to continue to do more with the Forge and drive traffic from the Forge, the quarries, into downtown. So that's kind of a timeline that we're hoping to get together and with Altogether. I may have doubled up there, George. And just a quickie overview of some of the initiatives we want to take in the upcoming fiscal year. We do have some of this in the capital budget. Some of it ends up in community development. But you know, as I mentioned, starting I guess with the Forge, we want to enhance the wayfinding connections. They're completing a signage project with their consultant, and I've been talking with Jeanette, and we're going to come in and work with them on kind of being on the other side of that signage. Expanding bike parking, improving the streetscaping. The I&M Canal looks great along Talcott now, with thanks to Public Works and the tree removal. So we want to add some bike parking there. We're going to add some new landscaping. I think we got some hanging baskets coming in for the Stevens Street Bridge. Thanks again to the focus group as well. The downtown focus group has kind of helped identify some needs there. And I mentioned doing some parking lot improvements potentially behind Stanton's building. The outdoor dining is something that all the downtown folks are excited about. Wooden Paddles ordered new new outdoor dining furniture. We have had some requests for picnic tables to come back, especially on Talcott Street by La Dolce, and now that 111 is open. I thought those looked really, really nice over there last year. And Diggs on Canal would like to continue to use Budnick Plaza. So we'll work with them on, some resodding or something like that as they make their plans. I was in downtown Lemont on Saturday, and man, what a beautiful day. I wouldn't have guessed that we'd have the snow and that you would need the igloos still, but thankfully they have them. Huey's wants to expand their outdoor dining in the front. They've proposed putting up a limestone knee wall where the stairs are currently. So those are some different projects that we're going to take a look at and we could bring back to the board. We're because of the changes with the chamber and space is at a premium downtown. We do get a lot of requests from different village partners to use the old PD. We have the garden club in there, potentially to use the metro station. Talked about doing some arts programming down there potentially. And then wrapping up along Illinois Street, we want to finally address some of the fencing and safety improvements that were started really when we were able to improve the area where the creamery is going into. Getting that outdoor space cleaned up and putting up the fencing there really helped bring the creamery to town. So it's important to keep doing those investments. I'll stop there, George, if there's any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Great job. This might be a good slide to stop on. I know we had a couple hands up, couple things you missed that I saw that I approved today. 3 new bubblers in the I&M Canal. I know the Public Works Department is awesome. They've taken great pride. So you're going to see, the water moving a little bit out east of Stevens Street here soon. Those are the little touch points that I think that we've been able to do. Illinois Street, you mentioned, the Park District. Probably we'll get into Tri-Central later on tonight, but the fitness park, we're working with IDOT on permitting, and hopefully we can bring that to the table. And any other questions now while we have our downtown map up.
Hey, George,
Yeah.
I do have one, and this is more just
Rodney.
I don't know, just a coordination of the more passive spaces, I guess. Because we're budgeting for the place underneath the bridge, for the concrete pad for that area. And we're also looking at the Tri-Central places, and the early goings will be passive space to the east end of that. So I guess what I'm suggesting is that we make sure we're not cannibalizing one for the other as we plan these things, and that we don't have duplication of what we're trying to do, because we're going to end up with 2 spots available for the same thing, and we need to be careful of that.
Yep. No, good point. I think they're different enough, but you're right. I think we'll make sure that we're planning in the right spot for them. And you missed the last meeting. We're probably about 6 months away from, the IDOT or the fitness park bridge from even being put out to bid. So there's some time to look at these things.
No, I heard that, but I'm saying in this plan today, when I was looking at the notes, and once we get to the Tri-Central, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Yep.
But, it just seemed to me like there's an overlap of what we're doing, and so we may want to change one of them, or at least define them differently or something.
Good point. Ron, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I have a question for Chris. I was wondering when we're going to find out the results of the 2020 census, because some of our income is based on population. And I was wondering if the figures you put out now are based on our old population, or have you just thought that, kind of guessed at what the population figures are going to be? So that's what I was wondering.
Didn't you go to 17.4, Chris?
Yes, I went to 17.4. The only one I really changed was the income tax one, because that's our largest. And I did it for a portion. So I believe it's either July or that they're supposed to have it. So, but yeah, I did go to 17.4. I did do a partial year, but I only did it on the income tax because the motor fuel tax is so volatile. I really did not. I don't want to bank on that. And then the local use is going to be, that's also per capita, but the effects of are we going to be able to get, is the state going to actually going to be able to enforce the change from the local use tax to actually the municipalities? So those are the ones that are per capita. The only one I really changed was the income tax.
Yeah, that's
guess-
what we're hearing.
Yeah, George, while we got Chris here too, I got two questions also to go back to her. One thing I didn't quite understand, and maybe you can run through it quick, Chris, on the telecommunication, it's down 30%. I would have expected that to be up because of the COVID. Why is it down?
A lot of places had said the reason why the telecommunications tax is down is because the businesses use basically the call centers, the landlines, and those are down because of that. Everybody else uses cell phones, and I believe it's because of that. It's because of the business.
Maybe it's just our governmental lines that are down. Okay, and they don't pay the tax anyway.
No, it's I think, Rick, it's a lot of those revenues are based on, how the past used to, example is cable, we get 5% of the cable bill. A lot of people are cutting the cord, and going to streaming services. And until the federal government catches up and allows, municipalities to tax those services, it's going to go down. So those are revenues.
Okay, and then I guess another big one, as we continue to talk about parking, what are our parking fees overall? On our commuter parking lot, because obviously you drive by there any morning, there's 25 cars there instead of what used to be there. So
yes.
How's that going? And we may need to look at, well, let me go a different way. They're talking about 20% of downtown Chicago's office space not being refilled, which means, that's going to be less cars parking in the commuter lots also because less people are going downtown. So I guess at some point in time, do we want to consider using those parking spaces for other things rather than developing new parking? You don't want to build a new parking lot and then have a commuter lot sitting empty. Somewhere along the line, we got to start paying attention to that too.
Okay. So there's two folds on
a lot of questions there. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's fine. So commuter parking as a whole. Okay, so I had looked at, and that's one of our revenues that we are losing approximately $60,000 a year. Permit fees are down 50%, and daily is down almost 100%. Daily's down a lot. It's amazing though. On permit fees, we receive about $45,000 a year in revenue. We sold about 20,000. So people are still thinking they might come back.
Okay.
But anyway, we are very fortunate in the commuter parking that we do have significant, first of all, we did a lot of our capital projects are all done. We've done a lot over the years, and we do have a very strong fund balance. However, with that, we only have like 2 years. So yes, we need to look at, if it doesn't come back to where it was, we had a wait list of over 2 years. So if 20%, we might be able to see the commuters come back because we have a zero wait list anymore. And our daily, I used to count how many empties. Now I count how many are actually parking there. The other thing is, yes, we need to look at, there's a portion of our lots that we own, that Metro doesn't own, that we don't lease from Metro. So we do need to look at if it doesn't come back, we need to look at that.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we shouldn't be utilizing some of that for our public parking. That's all.
Yeah.
Rick, there was a business looking to utilize that the Metro parking lot. They said it was pretty empty. There was a business, he wanted to park 100 cars there a day. So I don't know if it's something you guys would consider. Yeah,
well, like I said, it seems to me that if our revenues are down What we don't want to do is go spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to purchase land and develop parking, and then have empty spaces right in the middle of town that we're not getting the revenue we anticipated from. We gotta, we gotta stay paying attention to what's happening with that.
And the good thing, Rick, with the downtown, the fitness park, opened up our eyes a little bit, because we do need to update our leases. Basically, all that parking in that area is Metro must approve any deviations to it, but it's a good time, to sit down with them, because we do have a lot of, it'll be interesting to see when we go through our parking study. Jason is just counting that we have a lot of spaces on the west side of town. I know everyone says that parking's a problem, and it is in some areas, but we do have a lot of parking right now. So we're working on that with Metro, and but they don't have a crystal ball either. They probably wish that everything comes back immediately, but I don't know how many people are going downtown, even in the next year.
I had a question regarding the parking garage. I know the parking garage fund is you're rolling it into the general fund. But for the maintenance, I think I mentioned to you, George, about that garage is in terrible shape interior. There's a lot of things going on in there. I think we need to spend a lot of money in the garage.
No, you'll see in their building discussion that the lighting, but no, it needs some maintenance. And the reason why we're eliminating the fund, because it's not making money. So we're going to treat it like our village hall, like our public works building, and it's a building that we own, and we're going to have to pay close attention to. But I think you're right down there. It needs some lighting upgrades, and there's some other concrete repair, but it's something we have to really look at along with our other buildings.
Yeah, I saw a boat parked there and some commercial vehicles. So it's starting to. We better keep an eye on it.
Yep.
Just a question, do we have a camera going in and out of that parking garage? Just curious.
We do, Chief. I don't know how upgraded it is. I mean, it might be one of those older ones in the parking garage. Do you know how up to date those cameras are?
No, they're pretty legacy. In fact, we're still working on enhancing the current equipment with Mark Daniels, but ultimately that needs to be replaced with the state-of-the-art system. The images and those cameras are grainy. So that needs to be part of our whole camera replacement process.
Yeah.
You'll get a lot of people using that, George, if we get it lit up pretty good. It's pretty dungy in there.
Yeah, I don't think it's even LED. I mean, you're talking about just like anything. It's 15 years old now, and I think it needs some upgrades. All right. Anything else in the downtown? And then we'll kind of move on to finish up here. No. All right, Chris, you want to take the next couple, and then we'll finish with buildings, maybe?
Okay, so in finance, basically you'll see the large increase is basically the transfer to the building maintenance fund of $225,000. If you go to the next slide, that's the large green portion. But if you go to and then also, like I said before, the increase in banking and credit card fees, we'll probably have to do amendment for this year, but it's about $10,000 because we went from, especially on the vehicle stickers, we went from people coming here and being able to drop off to 100% online, which was all credit cards. So the credit cards fees do tend to increase. And then, as I said before, on the bank trust for utility customers. On police, same concept. If you want to go to the next one, we already discussed a lot their capital equipment, but really their major increase is their capital equipment. We already, we pre-ordered the cars because it takes a long time. We won't receive them until the year. And then just basically, we discussed it before, all the capital equipment that we budgeted for. And then basically, like George had said, there's a lot performance measurements in the book. I just kind of pulled one per department just to show that we will be putting performance measurements into the book for this year. On Public Works, the same concept again. If you go to the next one, we did add all the capital equipment back into the budget for the next coming year. So they do have the the board has already reviewed the capital equipment that we've done, and we've also put on order our trucks. And then once again, just kind of for performance data, where we have water main repairs estimated that it goes down because we're doing more infrastructure maintenance, and then the salt per ton. And then the water fund, it's basically the proposed revenue. It's the water fund is supported by charges for services, and as well as, if you look at the next slide where we talk about the capital equipment, the capital projects. We have two capital projects. One's 100% grant funded, and the other one is Archer Avenue, and that's for the tower. That's the land portion of it before we build the tower. So that's bond funded. With other funds, we go, I kind of put the pension fund out there. I did last time, and the pension, the IMRF data is actually the 12. We just received 12/31/2020. They end their fiscal years or calendar year. Strong returns of 14.69%. Hopefully that it continues in April. So our pension fund will have also those kind of returns. But IMRF, Social Security, and Police Pension is all a levy, as you can see how much we've levied. So between the three, you're over $2 million worth of a levy for the pension funds. And then we go into the building maintenance fund. So we did a 10-year building maintenance fund. What we did is the first year, and then we will increase we will update years 2 through 10 every single year as we go. And like I said before, we're transferring $225,000, but we're spending $223,000. Almost $224,000 of that. And like George had mentioned, there's a lot of repairs in Village Hall, and some minor, we do have some on the parking garage. We do have some repairs too, minor repairs. And then of course the old police station next door to us. So I don't know, George, or do we want to go through each of the?
Well, I mean, and it probably needs a separate meeting, but I will just say last year we did, we had analysis done on all of our buildings, basically looked at all of our components based on age and wear and tear, and made some recommendations. Obviously with COVID, I wish we could have started last year, but we know we need to start putting money away into this account. The way we did it, since while you may have, deficiencies in a certain item, it's not urgent that you fund the complete improvement that year, is that we did. We funded the budget year, which this year is 2022. And then what we did is we created two categories, kind of a 2 through 5, kind of an intermediate column, and then 6 to 10, just so every year we can look and see, do we need to bump that up into current funding, or keep it where it is, or move it back. This winter, with the 30 inches of snow that was compiled, maybe more, Ralph would probably have the number. We did have leaks on both sides of the Village Hall and the old police station. We're getting estimates and further analysis done. We're more than likely going to need a new roof on both sides here in the near future. So just some big ticket items are coming up. As you move forward, you're looking at heating and cooling improvements, but the roof is pretty critical. And it also gets into, what do we do with, the bigger picture discussion? What do we do with the old police station? We're not going to knock down Village Hall, but the old police station, is underutilized. The chamber's in there now. We've had folks who like to use it for storage, but how much money do we dump into that, to the old police station, when you could look at future years? There's the, that's the new police station. Future years, you're looking at, $500,000 worth of improvements to the old police station. It's pretty, people go through there and really like it. I don't understand it, but no, it needs a lot of work. But in the near term, the roof, the boiler system is, very old. So yeah, just a lot of, you don't have the funding immediately to do it all. So you You put it away and chip away at it over time. That's the old police station. I skipped over a couple. Here's we don't even have lighting in here. That's one of those, the thing that popped up kind of mid-budget season that we'll have to add. But the parking garage will need some maintenance on the deck. It's just your standard maintenance every 10, 15 years. You have Public Works will need, some work on their roof. And Ralph can get by with patching and without a complete new roof. And then even the police station is our newest building, but the floors need finishing, and then eventually, roof maintenance and other improvements. So got it broken up by building. Go ahead.
George, you mentioned a parking garage a couple times relative to lighting. And I keep thinking about, we did upgrade all that lighting to LED lighting, maybe, I don't know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. What is the lighting that what are you talking about?
You'll have to go in there when it's night. It's nothing that's not, not in compliance with code. But Ken, when we went in there for the ice carving competition, the other day, it's dim, probably potentially from a risk management standpoint. It's not, I don't know if there's a standard, if anyone knows anything about parking garages, but is there a standard luminaries per foot? It looks dim when it's dark out, right, Ken?
It looks dim during the day. You go in there during the day, it's pretty dark in there with the lighting.
And it's that old orange. It's like it might be.
No,
an LED.
I don't think it's orange. It's dark. It's like you could hardly tell.
So you're talking about there's insufficient lighting within it. And what I'm asking is, when we upgraded to the LEDs, did we change the lighting, or was it always like that?
No, see, one of the issues that you guys are seeing and talking about is the garage is surrounded by buildings, and it's kind of unique compared to other parking garages, in my opinion. There's no sunlight that goes in there. So we did do the upgrades to the LED, and it did improve it, but we certainly can look at, in the future, adding lighting, to make it more, people feel more safe when they go through there. But we did do the upgrades, and it did help.
Okay. And is it performing like we thought, Ralph, that LED lighting?
Yeah, I believe it is.
Okay.
I haven't been there in a while, and I know you guys have, but I'll take a ride down there tomorrow and make sure everything is working in it. If the lenses are dirty, we can get those cleaned up. So I'll take a peek.
So anything
Okay.
more in the? Go ahead.
I answered what I had. Thanks.
So that's the strategy. Put some money away, keep evaluating it. And last year we were going to put a couple $100,000 away, which we had to hold off on. So potentially we can use some of the, hopefully if it qualifies, some of the COVID money that potentially could be coming from the federal bill, maybe we can put into the buildings if it's eligible. So I understand it's going to be pretty tight criteria on how to use those funds. Anything else, Chris, did I miss or?
That's it on the building maintenance.
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, and so on, I basically put together a fund balance graph for infrastructure motor fuel as, you can see before we did our non-home rule sales tax in 2017, we were down like to $11,000 in fund balance in the road improvement and infrastructure fund. So it's really helped. The non-home rule sales tax really has helped, and we've increased our projects as well. So we've discussed that during the capital improvement program. The next one is some fee ordinance changes. These are basically have been discussed already. We're just kind of making them, and you'll see it to adopt the new ordinance for the coming year. You'll see these changes reflected in the fee ordinance for this year. But like I said, we've already discussed these, and these are just basically adding them to the fee ordinance. So these are the community development ones, and the next slide is the police ones that we have done. So on the next steps, basically March 22nd, we'll have our second public hearing on our budget. Our budget has been out on the village's website. I actually had 2 phone calls on it. So the proposed budget has been on the village website since the beginning of March. So so we'll have the public hearing. Anybody can view the budget online. And then on April 12th, we're scheduled to adopt our budget, adopt the fee ordinance, and then adopt the pay plan. That's all I have.
Hey, Chris, before I, the component to the budget, we usually, develop the budget, get it approved, but then we get our pension funding report in June. So those are, how is that going to work this year? Will there be an opportunity for a supplemental payment if the board wants to go that route, or how will we handle that in the existing budget or the new budget, or?
Yes, if the board decides to do a supplemental payment, we'll see where we are year to date. We can do a retro and we can put it into the budget, the fiscal year 21. If we decide to do it in fiscal year 22, what we'll do, we'll just amend the budget accordingly. So it's hard to say, okay, let's put in some money where we don't even know where we're at or what is going to be needed. So, so in June would be the best to decide.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, and then I have the last, do you want me to go over the last agenda?
Yeah, anything else before we get into the audit conversation, or I think anything else to add? Or
George, I got one other, just a note for you guys, mainly for yourself, Jason and Ralph. I saw, it was either Thursday or Friday last week, Cook County is sending out to the township, I think it was 175,000 of, dollars with the COVID monies. So they're getting another 175 that they didn't count on. And I'm just putting that into play for some of our township cooperative agreements that we have with them on potentially some of our roadways, maybe down by the Forge or something like that. If we need something that we weren't planning on, just thought I'd throw that out there.
is that not through MFT? That's COVID money, Rick? I'll have to double check.
I think it was through the COVID. I just saw it come through. I don't remember if I sent it over to anybody, but I might have it. I'll dig for it. But it was 175,000, and it was for Lemont.
Yeah, no, I think we'll look into that, because I did talk to Mike Shackle a little bit about, we also have a cost sharing agreement for Lima that we think we have almost complete, although Lima does need a new vehicle, and Mike has to get that approved through his board in order to contribute the amount that's per the agreement. So, but also the roadways, I think you're right. Once these roads become annexed by the village, it'll be our issue, how many of them can get upgraded beforehand.
Well, and as we've said before, and John's pointed out before, all of the village is in the township. So I'm just pointing that out. There potentially is some windfall dollars there to their fund.
Yep. Good point. All right. Anything else? All right, Chris, you want to go to the final, your final item, getting to the end here, right.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have a slide, but go ahead on the audit coming up.
So basically every 5 years, we have a new contract. We have a 5-year contract with our auditors. 5 years ago, we did an RFP with Baker Tilly, we did an RFP, and our current auditors, Baker Tilly, actually they were awarded the contract again. So we do have the auditors now for 10 years. We don't have to go out for an RFP every 5 years. In speaking to other communities, really a lot of times they go if they're not happy, or if they just want to change the auditors, or if they want some competitive pricing. Our current auditors have been phenomenal with the pricings. They've only increased 3%, and they've done a lot more with the state requirements. State has added a lot of information that they needed. And they just have really assisted us. All training has been free. I would like to see, I asked our auditors to give us a contract for an extension for 3 years. That would get us over the whole COVID and the whole, if we have any leadership turnaround or anything like that for 3 years. And so then after 3 years, we can go out for an RFP when everything basically settles down. And I was just wondering if the board would approve that or if they do want us to. It's very difficult right now to go out for a bid with any questions or any, everything has to be done through Zoom still. So I would just like to basically delay it for 3 years.
They would rotate out their partners, correct, Chris?
They are. They're rotating their entire team is going to be rotated out. So it's a whole new team. They're large enough where we can do that. So it's almost we just have the history with them. They have our files still, but it is rotating out. The whole group is rotating out.
So Chris, just to clarify, you're looking to delay or keep them for another 3 years? Am I understanding you?
Yes, if we could extend it for another 3 years, and then after the 3 years, we would really, after 2 years, go out for an RFP because it takes a while to receive the proposals. We receive quite a lot. We're a fairly easy audit, I think. And then we received last time, I think we received 5 or 6 proposals. So yes.
And just out of recollection, what's been the annual increase in their audit fee each year?
3%.
Is that in line with what other towns are paying? I mean, I know inflation's not going up 3%, but
I did not look. I know they were 5 years ago, they were significantly lower than all the other firms that had responded to our RFP. But I have not actually looked to see if I can look to see if that's 3%, if that's basically.
But Chris, basically what you're also saying is besides just the annual increase of 3%, what they have done, Mayor, is taken on a bigger, what do I call it? The responsibilities have increased because of typical unfunded demands, and they haven't approached us for an increase based on their basic contract. Mm-hmm. So they're taking their 3% increase, including those adjustments for additional work. That's the point, I guess.
So go ahead.
For instance, it's called the GATA portal, and that's through the state with the grants that we have to do. We have to basically we have to put different types of financials on that portal, and they have to supply us with an opinion on that as well. So they've been doing that basically. Okay, here the first year was like, okay, this is what you need to do, and every single pronouncement that they have, they've been helping us. They've free training, and those are the services, and that's typical of an auditor, though, to give us those type of services. So yeah, every single year, a lot of stuff changes, and they provide excellent service on that.
And okay, so bottom line is you want to extend them for 3 years and 3% annual increase.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then like I said, in 2.5 years, we'll go out for an RFP, and then and see. So.
And just what is their annual audit fee right now?
It's around, I have that on there. It's around 36,000.
Annually?
Yes, that includes all the TIFs. Let's see.
Why don't you do this, Chris? I don't think we have an issue. I just think we just need some more information. Why don't you just put together like a 10-year history of what we've paid for our audits, and just, if you want to just kind of document, the scope changes, like, hey, they've taken on X more TIFs, just as a point of reference, so we just understand. I just don't want to find out, later, oh my God, their audit bills have doubled over 10 years. And I just as a point of reference, if you wouldn't mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, yeah, because they have it broken out in the engagement letter, but that's for the future for the 3 years. But I'll do a historic of it as well, so we can see. Yep.
Yeah, okay, because, okay, yeah, let's go from there, then I'll talk to you
Okay.
offline.
Okay.
All right, sounds good.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks.
All right. Anything else on the budget or? We will most likely have this April 12th, although we do have to talk a little more about collective bargaining with the board here at our next meeting. So at least we have another, as our contracts are up, we have another board meeting end of April, right, Chris? So we could still approve this up until that meeting. Since most of the work is done, I would say Chris and Darshon have done a great job. More to come, but probably on the 12th. All right. Well, we have one last item, at least on the agenda. I think we got everything. Fee ordinance, right? So the coordination with the MWRD and Lemont Park District, and I know this is where Rick was kind of talking about too. I do have some updated plans to share, and we're not supposed to call it Tri-Central anymore. It's a little joke between us and the Park District, trying to rebrand it. I don't know what we're going to call it, but it is the downtown Lemont Linear Park. Hopefully that's not what it's going to be called. No, this project is moving forward. MWRD has been really good to deal with. They were out at the site last week. We met them for just a visit and some testimonials where they were going to share with their MWRD board, really trying to highlight this project as a true successful partnership. These are some concepts most recent. We haven't talked with the board on this for a few months, but the staff engineering have been working, behind the scenes, working together on Zoom and in person, trying to put the next phase of this project together. One of the, the issues between, this site, and these are good problems to have, I guess, as we're trying to create, this convergence of park uses on one site. Here is the entire Tri-Central site, as we all know it, about 27 acres that ends about before this little slip right here. So I don't have any lines in here, but it goes all the way to the Stevens Street right away. And there's our project, the pedestrian bridge project, along with the linear park project, are coordinating with one another to coexist on this front parcel here. And if you've been out at the site, you'll see that, it is a key parcel because the site gets broken up by the Lemont Road Bridge, and it's right front and center at the foot, right after you get under the bridge. But it will also need to be complemented by the bike bridge that's going through engineering. But you could see the goal of the original, plan concept would be to have kind of a seating area, a parking lot, and I'll go through a couple more exhibits and then some play pieces. But the two sides have been coordinating on how best to accommodate both improvements. And I'm not going to go through this because, it's pretty busy, but I think the important part of these are two fairly ambitious projects that are happening, side by side. You can see the bike bridge and all the coordination on the right-hand side. Left-hand side is the Tri-Central property. But you can see some coordination between the entities, regional agencies, federal agencies, and how do we put all this together. And the plan does change based on available information. This is an updated exhibit of what we're calling for the Tri-Central site, phase 0.5. If you recall, last time we looked at it, it was broken up by phase 0, which included environmental remediation for the site, phase 1, which would include, seating area, parking, play piece, and then phase 2 and 3, which included ball fields, which could be, 5, 10, 15, 20 years out, and work with MWRD on phasing plans, all dependent on funding and how the project progresses. Based on some funding opportunities, the village has a grant that we're willing to contribute to this project. The Park District has money that they've allocated in their upcoming budget for this project. So an opportunity to move the project forward and kind of what they're calling kind of a phase 0.5, where you do remediation on a part of the project, move soils to the west, and install an improvement that the town can be really proud of, and it kind of, gathers excitement as it goes, because you'll start to see when I show some other images where if you have this at the front, now the rest of the property, the linear park, becomes a little bit more realistic. But the one issue that we were, working with the engineers is the accommodation of the pedestrian bridge. We are about, I would say, Jason, about halfway through phase 1 engineering, maybe not even, of the pedestrian bridge that's going to connect the north to the south. We're looking at another 6 months likely on phase 1 engineering, probably longer, dealing with IDOT and trying to get our ESR reports and whatnot. Then it goes into phase 2 engineering. You have to fund it, construction. Best case scenario, this bridge is probably 5 years out to construct, if everything lines up perfectly. But the last thing you want to do, obviously, is to plan a park and then have to, rip it up to put the bridge in 5 years from now. So I think not only do we want the improvements to coexist together, we want them to complement one another. So this is what the engineers have talked about and designed about how this could work, is that there's really two ways based on grade and having to meet grade for the bridge that this improvement could be implemented. One would be the one we saw probably about 3 months ago, where if you can envision, here's the sanitary ship canal. The bridge would come over here, and then it would do what we call kind of like a half moon. This is what you guys saw. It has to meet a maximum, 5% grade. So it's got to come out into here and then reach into Stevens Street. The problem with that scenario or alternative, it really bisects, this very, prominent corner, this 3 acres. That's probably some of the most important property regarding the Tri-Central site, where, and not only would you have a path of some sort, the elevation would be to a point where you'd have sloping. You really would render this area here, fairly useless. You'd have a bridge that would be, elevated, 6 to 8 feet up in the air. So you couldn't put any improvements. It would shift your park, your seating area, and your bridge further to the southwest and potentially west of the State Street Bridge. So they looked at it. The engineers worked together. I know Jason and I were on a call. These guys were talking grades and whatnot. The other option would be the bridge could end up curling, and I'll show more exhibits. You can see it from a down by the ground, would curl to a landing point where it would gather underneath the bridge, and then it would go through a pathway system that would get you to Stevens Street. So you can have an improvement with a play piece parking pathway system, and leave space for the bridge as it continues to get engineered. Here's the overall concept, in relation to the western 22 acres or so, is that phase 0.5 would include a smaller trail system, a parking lot. The advantage of doing it this way is you wouldn't have to deal with the road in this early phase, which could be expensive. It gets some project going, rather quickly. It's got to go through EPA approval and MWRD approval, but you're not dealing with years and years of engineering. You could see an improvement relatively quickly, end of this year, potentially early next year. If you go further down, here's the looking west now. So this would be your bridge as it starts to taper down, and then it would connect through this landing area. It would be parallel to a walking path, and then there could be a kind of a jumping off point. There would be, some signage that would get you back to Stevens Street safely. You can see this is heading west, parking lot with, some other features, boardwalk, seating area as a first phase. Here's another view of how this all could work out. You know, with working with MWRD and any site along the canal, there'd be green infrastructure, so it would be pretty heavily landscaped, but you could see how this would work in early phases. Here's another example. Here's the bridge, you know, kind of side by side to the walking path. And then
Is that Dave in that rendering? It looks like him.
Who's that?
It looks like John. Looks like the mayor.
Oh, John and Ken are usually on the barges. I've seen you guys out there on the barge. Get off those things. Here's another example of here's just another view of the play piece. This is what you're talking about, Rick. It is different. I mean, the fitness area, you know, this would be more to bring kids down, you know, so different types of parks, obviously. And then here's the entranceway to the parking lot. You know, I think it's kind of unique using you know, what looks like a bridge. This is incidentally looks a little bit like what Rob's looking to do on Lemont Street, although I think his is an Eiffel Tower, right?
Make sure you put the max headroom on there, 13 feet.
And then here's just an example of all the coordinating agencies, like I mentioned before. So kind of a cool, you know, the next steps would be obviously after tonight, and we could, I know Dave, I could have a separate meeting with him. I know he was feeling under the weather today. This project is changing based on available information, and, you know, next step would be to get in front of MWRD to approve phasing of this nature. EPA has to approve it. And you know, the good part about this, it kind of opens up that front area, creates an alleyway where you can kind of see it now, where this pathway system, I wish I had the whole plan, would lead into over time a longer path that would almost create a trail loop with fields. Incidentally, I'll go back to the first page. MWRD mentioned that other territory could be available out this way for lease. So starting small.
George, did they mention anything as they raise that elevation for this path now that would basically parallel the canal? Did they consider using some of the soil that is going to be moved to the west, where it could be encapsulated, maybe more to the east and to the north if they're changing those grades? You know, using it for fill.
Yeah.
As long as it's going to be encapsulated. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out.
No,
there.
they talked about that. There's one portion here that would have to be removed, but
right.
So yeah,
because then we wouldn't have to move that dirt as far. You just leave it where it is and push it to the north for that path.
Yep. Yeah, and I think, you know, if you look at over time, this parking area would be, you know, 20, 30 spaces or so, but it could be expanded underneath the bridge. You know, it's just a kind of a bite-sized project to get the project going. And also, you know, what's important is just continuing momentum, and there's grant funding out there for projects like this that you know, potentially we're able to secure the park district. But it's good to show our senators and Congress people, you know, that this is a real project. This is phase 0.5, funding for 1, 2, 3, and so forth.
George, you worked with MWRD, right? Didn't they reach out to you regarding this project, or weren't they looking for some sound bites about how good this project is? You want to just, I haven't heard.
No, they're.
Why don't you share with us?
Yeah, mostly the park district been working with on the lease, but they've been really good to deal with. They're always checking in. They reached out last week and asked if they could meet at the site, take some before photos. We're out there and you know, open up the fence, and then take some testimonials they want to show to their village or their MWRD board. I should say it. So we were joking it should buy us some good favor here to keep this project going, because they're excited. They're a good group. They love to see these projects come to fruition. We told them about how when you go underneath the bridge now, you know, the railroad bridge, it's looking a little tired, you know, right? The concrete's all ripped out, and they were not aware that we're putting a water main down there and we're repaving it. They were real excited about that because it'll look completely different once, Ralph and Jim get done with it and new pavement. The water main will be key just for the plants and landscaping out at the site. It's potentially all coming together.
Cool.
Any other, I know we'll get, obviously the first look at it, you have the concern where your bikers are coming over and they have to jog west before heading south. It's just one of these, we want these projects to complement one another, and I think it really does after you look at it, and even talking to the architects and engineers about it, the elevation change and the grading that has to, essentially steepen up to meet a bridge would render this a little bit useless. And then you're having to, go under the bridge and I think it's a better, but I mean, I'll defer to, bikers who is going west another 100 feet before you head south. Is that going to change the improvement? But we're limited in space on this area. They can't go east because of the railroad bridge. The grade has to be a maximum of 5%, so you can't come right down. Even this is, a little steep. You end up getting right into Stevens Street. This makes it a little bit more, works for a really cool improvement.
Sounds good. Anything you need from us, George, on this? Obviously, it's a good update for us.
No, I mean, I think we'll keep updating everybody. It's going to go through, the EPA has to approve this strategy along with MWRD. But what we're hearing is they're appreciative we're taking it on.
All right, sounds good.
Cool. That's all I had for the agenda. Anything else under new business or old business, Mayor, or?
No, I'm good. Anyone else have anything?
Well, now's the time. I don't think anyone's on, but we got Robert Vitas is on. Anybody from the public who wants to speak, now is the time to raise your hand, and this is the audience participation portion. No, and I don't see anybody, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right, so we will have executive session, correct?
No, not tonight. That might be an old agenda. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I didn't know if we were going in. Okay, all right, it is on there. But anyway, so with that being said, anyone else have any other questions or comments? If not, want to thank everyone for joining us this evening, and everyone have a great week. And George, I'll connect with you and Chris on the audit stuff. So again, Thanks everyone. Meeting is adjourned, and like I said, have a great week.